We can't make a joke of it.
You're the one claiming that you're the funniest, so
Dun 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 dun.
The first Lumia tablet. This is the Lumia 2520 running Windows RT 8.1, and of course, what's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and today we're taking a look at the Surface Studio from Microsoft. This is their very first all-in-one desktop computer, and the version I'm taking a look at here is the fully spec'd out model, which retails for $41.99. So this is a fairly high-end computer with a very specific audience in mind, but this is a really exceptional piece of hardware and design, and we're going to take a close look at it right now. So of course, this is a very expensive computer, and it does come with a very nice box. So the box itself does have some images highlighting its two main positions, the standard desktop view and the drafting position. Now, in order to unbox this, we do have to lay it flat. You'll see a little diagram at the top near the handle. Now, the first thing we'll have to do here is pull the tabs along the side so you can lift up the lid. Of course, to lift up the lid, you have to push in that handle. Once you lift up the lid, the first thing you'll see here is a lot of styrofoam and the computer itself, which is on the styrofoam pedestal. It looks like a giant tablet wrapped in plastic. Of course, we'll have to move this out of the way, but before we do that, you can see that it actually articulates. So it's in the drafting position when it's shipped, and all you have to do is lift it up out of the way and set it aside and get to the accessories that are also in the box. So we have three boxes to get out of the way. We have the keyboard and the mouse box at the top, so this is a long, skinny box. We also have some paperwork, which pulls out from the front of the box, and at the bottom of the box, we'll find a triangular box that contains the power cable. The power cable itself is very smartly designed. It's actually designed to fit flushly with the back of the computer, so it's not just a standard power cable. The paperwork includes a few pamphlets, including a very glossy pamphlet highlighting some of the uses of the Surface Studio. Inside, we'll find a much more practical user manual that explains how to connect it and how to power it on and many of the other features and ports. Now, getting to the accessory box, it comes with three accessories: the keyboard, the mouse, and the Surface Pen. So not included is the Surface Dial, which is a separate accessory. I also purchased this, and it is coming later. And if you want to see that video, please let me know. So first up, we have the Surface Mouse, which is a fairly conventional mouse. It's all plastic with physical clicks for left and right buttons. We also have a scroll wheel, which unfortunately does not support side scrolling. At the bottom, we'll find a battery separator, so this prevents the batteries from making contact until you pull the tab. Now, another very cool detail here is that the battery cover is actually magnetic, so it's really easy to remove it and reinstall it. It's just a very slick design. Now, although it's nothing really fancy here, I actually really like this mouse. It has a really solid left and right click, which is very important, and the scroll wheel is very responsive and made of metal, so it feels very nice. Next up, we have the newest Surface Pen, which is designed to work with a variety of Surface products, including the Surface Studio. The pen itself is all aluminum, has a very nice rigid design, and does have a battery compartment, so it is powered. Now, you can remove this by twisting off the top of it, and you'll see that the battery just slides out. The battery itself is a quadruple A battery and should last about a year depending on your use. The pen itself is actually flat on one side, and that's because it can be magnetically attached to the side of the display on both the left-hand and right-hand side. Also along that side, which is integrated into the rubber strip that protects it from scratching the aluminum, is a button, which can be used in a variety of ways depending on the software you're using. Also at the top of the pen is a clickable button. This can be used as an eraser, but if you click it, this will also activate different features depending on how you have it programmed. So this can be configured under settings, but in the case of the Surface Studio, a single click actually brings up an action center. It allows you to activate apps that can take advantage of the Surface Pen. So that includes things like taking a screen grab or composing a virtual sticky note, which you can place anywhere on the desktop and it stays there persistently. Also included with the Surface Studio is this full-size keyboard. This is an aluminum keyboard, so it feels very nice and rigid. It also includes a full number pad along the right side and a ton of dedicated function keys for things like bringing up the action center, showing your desktop, and a ton of other standard features such as media controls, volume, brightness, as well as search. Now, just like the mouse, it also has a magnetic battery enclosure built into the stand in the back. And you can see inside we'll find two AA batteries pre-installed, and if you want to activate it, you just have to pull the tab. Also along the other side, you'll find a Bluetooth pairing button. The keyboard itself does feel a lot like the previous generation of the Apple keyboard, the one before the Magic Keyboard. With a lot more key travel, but it does feel a little more solid and less wobbly. Now, getting back to the computer itself, it is wrapped in lots of plastic, but they do make it very easy to remove. So the first thing I want to do here is remove the styrofoam block that cushioned the computer when it was laying in its drafting position. We also have some plastic covering the chrome along the hinge. This protects it from scratching, and it's very easy to remove. All you have to do is pull up on the tab and it unzips. This works on both the left and right sides. We also have lots of plastic covering that very thin display, and we'll find tabs on all four sides. That makes it easy to remove this. Of course, I'm going to be very meticulous here and pull off each side so I can remove the plastic in one sheet. And lastly, we have some plastic covering the base, and you do have to lift it up in order to get access to the tab. Otherwise, all I have to do is pull up and it pulls off in one sheet. So in terms of design, it's really stunning. It's all aluminum, chrome, and glass. The only plastic you'll find here is on the bottom of the pedestal, which is part of the cooling system. It also allows the computer to be moved around and repositioned without sliding across the table. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is boot it up for the first time, and you'll see that the power controls and the volume keys are along the lower right side, very much like a tablet, so it's kind of unusual to see that here, but it is really easy to access. Now, the setup process does include configuring the Windows Hello feature, which allows you to use your face to log into a computer or to make purchases within the Microsoft Store. Now, Microsoft spent a lot of time focusing on the display technology here. This is a very unusual display in a number of ways. This is a 28-inch pixel sense display, the 3:2 aspect ratio. The display itself is laminated to the glass, and the panel is very thin at 1.3 millimeters. According to Microsoft, that's the thinnest LCD monitor ever built. The enclosure itself is only 12.5 millimeters thick, so that's edge to edge. The entire back panel is a very thin 12.5 millimeters. So it's really impressive, and it's an aluminum enclosure, so it's nice and rigid and looks fantastic. Of course, this is a full touchscreen, which is also designed to work with the Surface Pen and Microsoft's N-Treg technology. Now, this is not a 5K display, so we have a resolution of 4500 by 3000. That is better than 4K. That delivers a 192 pixel density. So that's not quite as sharp as the 5K display on the iMac. It is calibrated to the sRGB color spectrum as well as DCI-P3. And these are all things you can toggle right from the control panel. So you can quickly toggle between these color profiles right on screen, which is very handy, especially for people working with photography or video. And because we have this 3:2 aspect ratio, 28 inches is quite a bit bigger than a widescreen 27-inch monitor. So you have a lot more surface area, and I think it's a great aspect ratio for productivity, especially with this specific application. Now, the signature feature of this computer is that the display can articulate from a standard desktop view all the way down to a 20-degree drafting view, and you have lots of variable in between. And the hinge itself is called a zero gravity hinge, so it's very easy to use, and it's able to maintain a position, so it doesn't move when you're interacting with the display. Now, obviously, the drafting position is really geared towards specific software or specific creative professional that can take advantage of the sophisticated software that can use the Surface Pen. So like a lot of other modern styluses, the Surface Pen can detect pressure. So, of course, if you want a lighter stroke or heavier stroke, all you have to do is lean a little harder on the pen tip. There's also a sketch app that has been included, which is a great way of sort of exploring the capabilities of the hardware here without having to buy some of the more expensive software. So this computer really can keep track of a lot of inputs, from your fingers to the Surface Pen to palm and arm rejection when you're leaning on the display. Now, unlike most all-in-one computers, the base itself actually houses the electronics. So this is what powers the display that it's attached to. So our CPU, the fans, even the speakers are all built into this aluminum enclosure. The enclosure is surrounded by vents. There are three fans in here, which are designed to keep it cool and quiet, although it is noticeably audible, especially since it sits right in front of you when you're using the computer. So it's definitely louder than most all-in-one computers I've used, like the iMac, which places all those electronics behind the display and facing away from the user. Now, I wouldn't say it's loud, but it's definitely noticeable and something that's a little disappointing to me as a user. So in terms of specs, this is the top-end model. So that gets me a Core i7 quad-core, which is a 6th generation processor with 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM. We also get NVIDIA's GeForce GTX 980M with 4 gigs of GDDR5 memory. We also get a 2 terabyte hybrid drive, which combines the speed of an SSD with the inexpensive storage of a hard disk drive. So these specs are not terribly impressive for such an expensive computer. In fact, the quad-core is clocked at around 2.7 gigahertz, but we do get a lot of RAM here, which is useful for most of its primary apps. But it's pretty obvious that these specs are mostly designed for the small enclosure, but can keep up with the resolution and the primary software. So in terms of our Geekbench scores, it delivers around 4,400 on the single core score and almost 14,000 on the multi-core score. In terms of graphics, that comes in at around 86,000. Now that's actually less powerful than the 5K iMac I use for my main production. So if you look at those Geekbench scores, you can see there's a big difference, especially in terms of the single core performance and graphics performance. Now at the back of the base is all of our I/O, and the great thing here is that because it's at the bottom here, it's pretty easy to hide the wires, so the wires don't snake up to the display and become more visible like it is on the iMac. But the I/O is a little dated here. We do get 4 USB Type-A ports, which are USB 3, so we get USB 3 speeds, but we don't have Thunderbolt here. We do get a display output, so if you want to connect an external display, you do have that, but unfortunately no Thunderbolt in this case either. Of course, we get a 3.5mm headphone jack as well as an Ethernet port, and we do get an SD card slot, which is somewhat inconveniently placed, but that's not terribly unusual in computers like this. Now, there is a really impressive set of speakers built into the space. They're stereo 2.1 speakers with Dolby Audio, and it's really impressive. They're extremely loud with a good amount of range, and it's pretty immersive. Initially, it was actually kind of hard to pinpoint where the speakers were because it sounded like it was coming from around the display. So it is a really nice set of speakers. The only problem here is that as soon as you lower the display, the quality changes a bit. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. It does explain how to use the touch controls at the top, in addition to some of the voice commands you can use on this device. We also get a flyer that highlights some of the optional bases you can swap out, which includes both fabric and metal styles. Now, if you look at the top center of the display, you'll see quite a bit going on here, including 2 cameras. One of them is a Windows Hello camera. So basically, this is the face scanning camera that allows you to unlock the computer using your face, and it works pretty reliably. There's also a set of infrared LEDs that light up your face for that feature. There's also a 5-megapixel 1080p front-facing camera, which delivers fantastic quality. It's definitely better than something like the FaceTime HD camera on the iMac. We also get a set of dual microphones, and that's designed to work with the Cortana feature, so you can command your computer from across the room and reliably talk to it. Now, this is a feature that's turned off by default, so you'll have to turn this on under Cortana settings. You can also train it to your voice, so not everybody can access this. And unfortunately, it only works if the computer is awake, not when it's sleeping. Now, I do a lot of video editing on this computer, and it works fantastic. So 4K projects with this large display look great, and it seems to be able to keep up with it. It also goes without saying that this definitely is not a gaming computer, although it can keep up with some major new titles. But you'll have to scale back performance, and you definitely can't game at the native resolution. But of course, I'm not the primary target for this computer. I really don't have a need for a touchscreen or a digitizer because I'm not that sort of creative professional. So if you can, there's a ton of benefits to having this large screen and this fantastic display technology. But it's also a really nice all-in-one computer. It's got a great touchscreen, a fantastic display, with a lot of screen real estate for productivity. It's got a great audio system, but there are a few complaints that I have, and that includes the sound coming from the bass, which is a little too loud. In fact, that means I can't use it in my studio because it makes too much noise for the microphone. It's also a little expensive for a computer with somewhat outdated specs in I/O, so it'd be nice to see these updated next year. But otherwise, if you are a creative professional that needs a touchscreen and a great digitizer, this is a fantastic option, and you won't find anything else quite like it. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the Microsoft Surface Studio. If you did, please give it a thumbs up to let me know, and I'll see you again in the next video.
Joy. Two. Alex. Alex. Alex Toy. Livia Toy. Livia Toy. Yeah. How about this? What a hungry. Hungry Lisa. She's vacuuming. So that will take a long time. Sometimes. Lisa. That's not really vacuuming. But Uncle Sandy. What's food like macaroni? Macaroni. Yeah. The woman gets to telling you, the shall tell me. The shall at least tell me. And bowling. What's bowling? I think which one? Selfie. Here. Olha, que aleatório. Bom, é fácil. Fácil. Laughable balls. ستة شيء لسه سالتي وهذا يقول يعلمك how to do how to make برامج ده تلفون show it to me. Not really doesn't say. It's on the day of judgment. Sudah baca يوم القيامة الله أعلم. Joy, my joy, dude, I love you. baby. Thank you. I'm a toy.
What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, and we're taking a look at the Steel fibered concrete reinforcement has been around for many decades. They meet local and
يلا حبيبتي يلا بسم الله. المطار مطار جدة المغادرة كده المغادر مسافرين مصر. مع السلامة يا سلامة. اشوفك على خير. سلامة. اشوفك على خير يا عسل. اشوفك على خير يا رب ان شاء الله. وصلوا بالسلامة. يا رب. شكرا. لاينس. احنا كنا هنا يوم كنا في مدينة خرجنا من هنا. العودة إلى أرض الوطن مصر الحبيبة. شتينا يا مصر. ديسي ما انت في المطار اهو. او شنطة السفر اهي بتاعتنا اهي. شنطة السفر اهي. كده ركبنا القطار اهو ماشي. ده طبعا داخل المطار مطار جدة، لان طبعا المطار طويل جدا.
Train approaching the station. Occupy المحطة. Train arriving to the station.
يلا وصل. يلا ايوه. تعالي بسرعة يلا بسرعة بسرعة. تمام. رحلات المغادرة. طيب. تمام. هو ده الفطار اللي احنا بنجي اهو. رحلات المغادرة اهي. ده الفطار اهو. تمام كده. القاهرة. شوف بقى طيارة القاهرة. لحظة يا حاجة لحظة. طبعا ده هنا انتظار البوابات. شوف رقم البوابة اللي هندخل منها الطيارة أو جميع البوابات. تمام. رقم البوابة بتاعتنا 43A الاتجاه ده. البوابات 43A القاهرة. واحد وعشرين 39. تقريبا في الاتجاه ده. ثمانية وثلاثين 26. من 40 ل 50 البوابات اللي هناك اهي. اسمها السوق الحر. هو مديني السهم اتجه كده 40 ايه. وده طبعا احنا في ايه لسه مطار جدة. خلصنا الحمد لله اجراءات السفر. اهي 43 هناك البوابة بتاعتنا. هندخل منها طبعا الطيارة 43 ايه. بوابة 43 ايه. هاتي ايدك. عايزة تنزلي من هنا انزلي. انزلي عادي كده انزلي. يلا ننزل مع بعض عادي كده. ماشي كده احسن. ماشي. انزلي يا حبيبي. شاطرة شاطرة يا حاجة. كده احسن. تنزلي احسن ما تطلعي. الطيارة هي اللي هركبها فلاي ناس. وهي في طيارة كمان اهي. اهي الطيارة هي شايفاها يا امه؟ اهي واقفة اهي. واقفة اهي الناس بتطلع عليها اهي. اهي ايوه. اصبري احنا كده كده عارفين مكاننا. ما تجريش. خليكي معايا. خليكي ماسكة ايدي كده وما تجريش. تجري ليه؟ براحتنا مش تزحمي نفسك براحتك. احنا كده كده كل واحد معاه رقم ماما ما تلمسيش حد. ما تلمسيش حد. ما تزوقيش حد. ما تزوقيش حد. ايوه براحتنا يعني في لاينات. ايه يلا بس ثاني. يلا خليكي ورا. خليكي ورا.
What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with my in-depth look at the Galaxy Note 8, one of the most important flagships to end the year. The Note 8 is available in a few colors, but we only get Midnight Black and Orchid Gray in the US. Midnight Black is the version I have, and it's definitely a fingerprint magnet, and it's actually pretty difficult to film because it's very glossy. So from the edges to the glass, it's very reflective. But again, it's a really nice looking phone. It certainly feels great in the hands with that symmetrical design, rounded at the edges with a curved glass display. But we're going to set this aside and get to all of the accessories. So first up, of course, paperwork, and lots of it. In this case, it's specific to the T-Mobile version I have. Of course, we also get a SIM ejection tool. All of the accessories are black this time instead of white. And first up, we have the adaptive fast charger. Pretty similar accessory for Samsung. Besides the color, the design hasn't really changed. But we also get a bunch of easily lost accessories, such as two USB-C adapters, one for USB-A and the other for micro USB. There is a separate compartment for the charging cable, and we get a set of AKG headphones. Now, these are pretty decent headphones, nothing remarkable, but they're a nice in-ear style headphone with an inline remote control and microphone. And we also get this durable fabric cable, which should last longer than the typical set of included headphones. We also get a set of ear gels to find the right fit. And lastly are the accessories unique to the Note series, which are some pen tips so we can replace them. We also get the pen removal tool. So although the Galaxy Note 8 is a substantial update from the Note 7, it's pretty much an iteration of the Galaxy S8 Plus, but there are some significant differences. One of them is the S Pen, of course, along with a dual camera system, a larger 6.3-inch screen, and of course, lots of software features that take advantage of the S Pen stylus. But once again, we have facial recognition, iris scanning, an inconveniently placed fingerprint sensor, water resistance, a curved screen design, Gorilla Glass on the front and back, Bluetooth 5.0, wireless fast charging, and contactless payment systems such as Android Pay and Samsung Pay. And like it or not, we get a dedicated Bixby button. The big news with the Note 8, like many smartphones this year, is the extra tall display with the shrunken bezels. So although we still have small bezels at the top and bottom, most of it has been filled with this huge 6.3-inch Quad HD Plus display. We have a resolution of 1440 by 2960. That's good for 521 pixels per inch. So like Samsung's other displays, this can get very bright under the right lighting conditions. So when it's exposed to bright light, this display really ramps up the brightness for easy daylight visibility. And of course, this Super AMOLED display is just stunning to look at in any light conditions with those deep blacks and bright vivid colors, and that curve adds an extra depth to the display. And because everything is better with HDR, this display does support HDR10. So if the video app supports it, like Netflix or YouTube, you'll actually be able to view HDR10 quality on this phone, which is quite nice. Just like the Galaxy S8, the home button has been replaced by an on-screen button, but we still get haptic feedback when we press that button. So it sort of replicates a click, but unfortunately that means the fingerprint sensor has been relocated to the back of the phone right next to the camera, which is not a great spot for it. And especially with a phone this tall, it's actually more difficult to reach it than it was with the Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. But like anything else, you get used to it. And of course, you have iris scanning and facial recognition, but those features are not nearly as reliable as just the fingerprint sensor. This is Samsung's first dual camera setup, and it works somewhat similarly to the iPhone, but there's a few tricks that make it unique in the market. So once again, we have two 12-megapixel sensors, one with a 26mm f1.7 aperture and the telephoto camera with a 52mm and f2.4 aperture, and both of these have optical image stabilization. That's a first for the market. Stabilization is especially useful for a telephoto camera just because the handshake is amplified when you're zoomed in. The camera interface by now is pretty familiar for devices with dual cameras. We have a 2x option, which allows us to zoom in and then zoom back to the main camera. So basically, we're switching between cameras, but we can also manually zoom in and out using the shutter release as a slider. This camera also picks up a feature called Live Focus, which is very similar to the portrait mode on the iPhone. And that's thanks to the stereoscopic vision of the dual cameras. But in the case of the Galaxy Note 8, you can selectively adjust the background blur. And you can adjust this after you've taken the photo or while you're taking the photo. The Note 8 is excellent in basically all conditions, whether it's bright daylight, so you get lots of detail, great color, HDR works very effectively. It's also very well stabilized, so shots look very smooth and crisp, and it's able to focus very accurately and quickly. Generally speaking, anything you point this camera at looks fantastic in the end. It's not oversaturated, colors don't bloom out, and you see a lot of detail without too much overexposure and noise. When it comes to low light performance, I think the big news here is that both cameras seem to output very similar results. We see a lot of detail and color and very little colored noise. So for example, if you look at the black spaces, this camera has stripped away all of that noise, which is actually very difficult to do with most smartphone cameras. So I'm really impressed by the results. But if you look really closely, you'll see that some of it can be overprocessed. So it looks a little softened. It's still difficult to get sharp images in low light just because the shutter is open a little too long, so if there's any movement at all, you'll see it. The camera on the front, another feature borrowed from the Galaxy S8, is also really impressive. 8 megapixels with an f1.7 aperture and autofocusing. This also records at Quad HD at 1440p. We also get an LED light for the iris scanner, an infrared camera, a bunch of light sensors, and we still have room for the LED notification light. So the bottom edge of this phone has our fast charging USB-C connector, a headphone jack, so thankfully that's still here. We also have our single side-facing mono speaker. It would be nice if the earpiece also worked as a stereo speaker, especially since this small side-facing speaker can be easily muffled when you're handling the phone, especially during gaming. But if you're a fan of headphone jacks, you'll be glad to know that that's still here and water resistant. As always, the S Pen is very nicely integrated into the bottom corner of the phone, and you can eject it by pressing the top of it, and it just pops out, and you can pull the S Pen out. Now, the S Pen is a passively powered stylus, meaning that the display does all of the work. You don't need to recharge the S Pen, which is still very small. So if you have big hands like I do, it can feel a little too delicate, but it's nice and precise. Speaking of water resistance, this is IP68 certified, which means both the S Pen and the phone itself can be submerged in water up to 1.5 meters, up to 30 minutes. And if you pop the SIM tray, you'll find a gasket surrounding it, which keeps it nice and watertight. Now, in that SIM tray, you'll also find the micro SD card slot. So this does support SD-XC cards, which can go up to 2 terabytes. But of course, we have quite a bit of internal storage as well. We have anything from 64 gigs all the way up to 256 gigs with 6 gigs of RAM. As always, when it comes to specs, it gets a little complicated here just because there's 2 CPUs, one in the US and China and one in the rest of the world. So the US and China get a very familiar Snapdragon 835, while the rest of the world gets the Exynos 8895 octa-core CPU. And of course, the Snapdragon comes with the Adreno 540 GPU, while the Exynos comes with the Mali G71 GPU. Well, the battery is quite a bit smaller here. It's 3,300 milliamp hours. Samsung says this has nothing to do with the Note 7. Instead, the phone just doesn't have enough room for a larger battery. Battery life is a little disappointing for a device of this size. I'm seeing a fairly average 4 hours, 4.5 hours of on-screen time for a full day of use. Now, you can manage this a bit better if you dial back the resolution, the screen brightness, as well as using one of the power saving measures. So for me, using this full blast, it seems to be about 4.5 hours of on-screen time, but I do get a full day out of it. The Note 8 is compatible with the DeX Station. So I've reviewed this previously. I'll leave that linked in the description below, but this allows you to turn your Note into a desktop computer. So you can connect a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse and interact with your Note in a unique desktop experience. Taking a look at the software experience, starting with the lock screen, we have that always-on display, which is showing us our notification badges as well as the date and time and battery status. We also have the home button for waking up the device, and when you press on it, you do get some haptic feedback. Of course, we can see all of our notifications and expand out our quick settings up top. Of course, with the S Pen, we also have the off-screen memo app. So this allows us to jot down the memo as soon as you eject the S Pen without unlocking the device. So if I write down test, just to show you, I can save this in the Notes app, or I can pin it to the always-on display. So if I pin it to the always-on display, every time I wake up the device, I have quick access to that note. So it allows me to quickly glance something that might be important. Of course, we can customize the always-on display. All we have to do is go to lock screen and security, and under always-on display, we can schedule this or just turn it off entirely. Now, you have several always-on display faces you can select from a calendar to an edge clock to an image. Now, if you go with the default model, you can also select different colors or backdrops. So if I select a different backdrop here, you can add a little bit more color here to make it a little more interesting. I can also change up the color of the font. So again, if you want something a bit more vibrant than just black and white. The big news with any Note series is the S Pen. So the S Pen is still very similar to the Galaxy Note 7 I reviewed, but as always, there's a few new features to take a look at here. So when you eject the S Pen, the first thing that pops up here is the error command. Now, if you want to get away from that, just tap on the screen. It goes away, and you can see it sort of hovers in the background, and you can reposition it, change size, and then bring it forward again by tapping on it. So if I hover the cursor over a text box, I get the option to input the text via handwriting. So again, let me bring this up here, hover the cursor over top of it, and then tap on it. And now I can just enter what I want. So let's just say Android. And as I write, you actually get the audio feedback that's like writing on paper, so I actually hear that. Now, when I tap on error command, I get a bunch of these shortcuts which I can swipe through, but you can also modify this under settings. If you go to shortcuts, you can modify them right here, so you can rearrange them, remove them, or add new ones, but you're limited here. Now, you can add just the S Pen features as I have, or add any apps you want. So they're basically just shortcuts to those apps. In terms of some of these utilities, we have create a note, which is pretty basic. So if you want to create a quick note, click save. This will save it off, and you can go back to what you were doing. Or you can go to view all notes, so you can see all of your previous notes. In my case, it's just Scribble. We also have Smart Select tools. We've seen this before. This gives us some tools for more sophisticated screen grabbing. So for example, I can draw a rectangle on the screen and just grab that portion of it. And then I can auto select elements from that, such as photographs or text. I can extract the text or pin it to the screen. So if I select pin to screen, so this is one way of sort of multitasking. I have a quick grab of some info I might need while I navigate elsewhere in the system. There's a few other utilities in here, such as animation. So if I take this box here, I can resize it, and this will allow me to record a GIF animation. So if I click record, this will record for up to 15 seconds. And of course, I can stop it at any time. This makes more sense for video, but in this case, it's just a slideshow. You can also change the quality from standard quality to high quality if you want to reduce the file size. We also have a translate utility. So if we tap on this, we can hover the cursor over a word and translate it into English. So werden is wood. And you can also change the language up top. And if you're not sure how to pronounce something like gewinnen, what we can do here is select the speaker.
Gewinnen.
And we'll pronounce it for us. Another utility is Bixby Vision, which is also new here. Now, Bixby Vision is also a better way of translating. So, for example, with that activated, all I have to do is hover the cursor over top what I'm doing here, automatically selects it, and it gives me a few things I can select from, such as text, extracting the image, or searching for shopping items. So let's go ahead and select text. Right now, it's actually looking at the text, and it's going to give me the option to extract the text or to translate it. So if we translate it, it's going to translate the entire paragraph. A few other features I've activated include glance, coloring, and magnify. Glance is pretty basic. It basically allows us to minimize whatever app we're currently looking at, and then we can go off and do something else. And then we can hover the cursor over that app to jump back to it, remove the cursor, and it goes back to the app we were just looking at. Coloring is just a shortcut to the Pen Up app. So basically, this is like an adult coloring book. So you get all these patterns you can color in with the different colors you can select from and different pen tips, and it can keep you busy for a while if you like doing this sort of thing. Magnify is pretty self-explanatory. You just get a magnifying glass, which you can hover over the screen here to magnify things to take a look at. And you can also change the intensity from 150% all the way up to 300%. One of the new features is called Live Message, which basically allows us to handwrite a GIF. So just to show how this works, let me go ahead and write hello. Now I can keep writing as long as I want. You can see that little indicator up top will continue scrolling as I write here. So let me fill this up here. You can see I hit a red line. Now it's done. So if I click done here, this will actually save that animation as a GIF, and I can share that. So there you go. We get a preview of the animation. And if I want, I can go ahead and click share and send this off as a text message or send it off to one of my social networks. The main interface isn't terribly different for Samsung. This is very similar to the Galaxy S8. Swipe down to get to our notification shade. Swipe down again to get to all of our quick setting toggles, which we can swipe across to get to. We can also swipe up or swipe down on the home screen to get to our app drawer and universal search. Swiping all the way over to the right brings us to the Bixby voice assistant. We can also activate Bixby by hitting the dedicated key on the left side, which takes us to the same panel. Tapping and holding brings us to the voice assistant. What's the weather like tomorrow? So you actually have to hold that in order to activate it.
With a high of 64.
Down below is the on-screen navigation bar. No longer are they off-screen physical or capacitive buttons. Now, if you go into an app here, you'll see another button up here. This allows us to quickly hide it just by double pressing it. So this allows us to hide the navigation bar, and then we can swipe up again to get access to it. And if you want to lock it back in place, you tap that icon again. When it comes to managing apps, they've changed quite a bit since the Note 7, but this is very similar to the Galaxy S8. When you tap and hold on an app, you have the option to select multiple apps. So if you do that, you can see up top, we can create a folder for those apps, remove the shortcuts, or uninstall them. So that's one way of batch editing all of this. What we can do here is clear the badge. So if you want to remove the notification badge, you can do that. But we can also uninstall. We can go to app info, sleep the app so it's not running in the background, or remove the shortcut. The app drawer also behaves a bit differently since the Note 7. So for example, tapping and holding on an app brings us again to those editing options. So we can add this to the home screen, or you can just drag and drop it to a folder within the app drawer, or take it up to the home screen and drop it there. We can also add up to 5 apps within the dock. In terms of foldering here, if you go to the app drawer, tap on the folders, you can also customize the name and the color of the folder. Or if you just want to add apps, you can do so very easily without having to drag and drop them. Another very familiar feature is the edge screen. So as you can see, we have this little tab along the side. When you tap on it, you can see it expands out. And then we can swipe across on it to get to it. Now we can swipe across our different edge screens here. So we have weather, our app shortcuts, favorite contacts, and some device maintenance stuff. But what you can do here is go to settings and highly customize this. So we can select different edge screens we can add, such as a quick tools one, reminders, and much more. Or you can go to downloads to install new ones. Now, if you tap on settings, we can reorder these. So all I have to do is drag and drop them around like so. You can also uninstall them or change the handle settings. So you can swap from the left to the right side, change the opacity and the positioning of the handle and more. One of the new features within the Apps Edge is App Pair. So you can combine two apps at the same time. So when you tap on it, it opens them up side by side in a split screen view. Now you can customize this by going to the editor. So if we go to the editor for the Apps Edge, this allows us to create an app pair. So all I have to do is select the two apps I want to open up side by side. In this case, I want Chrome and YouTube. You can also switch the orientation. So if you want YouTube up top instead of Chrome, you can do that and click done. And then we have the new app pair. So if you don't want this one, just exit that out and drag this toward the top. To edit the home screen, tap and hold, and this brings us to a very familiar editor. So we can rearrange these screens. We can assign different home screens. We can turn off the Bixby Assistant if you want, and then we can jump right to the home screen settings. So within the home screen, you can change the screen layout for the app drawer and the home screen, which are different. You can also add the apps button. So if you want to add the app drawer button, you can do that. So if we click apply here, now you go to the home screen, you'll see the app drawer button, which takes us right to the app drawer. Now this does not remove the option to just swipe on the screen to get to the app drawer. So at least you have a quick shortcut. We can also hide certain apps. So if you don't want to uninstall, just hide them, you can select them right here. Now by default, we have the app drawer, but if you want to merge everything to the home screen, you can do that again. Just go to settings, go to home screen layout and select home screen only, click apply. So all of the apps that were within the app drawer, as you can see, the app drawer has disappeared, are now on a separate screen. So when you swipe up on the home screen, you just get to universal search. You swipe all the way over to the right to get to the rest of your apps. Of course, you can undo this if you want to go back to the way things were by default. Just go ahead and select home and app screen, click apply, apply. And now the app drawer icon is back if you prefer, and the apps are back in the app drawer. Briefly taking a look at the settings up top. Now what you see up here is that the brightness slider only appears when you swipe all the way down to see all of them. Otherwise, you just get the first 6 icons up top. Now you can select from several options here. So you can select show control on top, which I always click on. I wish this was on by default. Click done. Now, anytime you bring up the drop-down shade, you'll see your brightness slider here. And of course, you can also select auto brightness. Taking a look at these settings, pretty fast stuff. Tap and hold to get to the full settings panel, or you can also quickly access some of the features that are unique to this device, such as the always-on display, so you can quickly toggle that on and off from the screen. We have something called performance mode. So this allows us to quickly dial in the performance of this device. So if you want the best performance with the highest screen resolution, you can go ahead and select that. Now it's very interesting, at least on the T-Mobile version of this phone, the maximum screen resolution is not on by default. You actually have to change that if you want, but you can also just enable high performance mode, which will increase the screen's brightness and maximize the resolution. But you can also just customize this if you want. We also get a blue light filter, which we can toggle on and off. If you tap the text, this will take us to a few more controls, so we can change the opacity of the feature or go to details to get to the full control panel. So I can turn this on now and again change the intensity or schedule this. So this allows me to schedule by sunset and sunrise or select my own schedule. We also have our power saving feature. So if you want to enable one of the power saving modes, you can select that here as well. And there's quite a few you can pick from. So again, you can go with the medium power saving mode or customize this and select something else. Of course, you can customize this. So you can change the button order. So you can drag and drop from the dead space to the active space. So if you just want to hide some of these, just take them to this area. But you can also just drag and drop all of them if you want. We can also change the button grid. So if you want a denser view, you can select 5x3 or just go with default, or something more spacious like 3x3. Another unique feature is voice wake up. So I've turned this on. I can tap on the text to get to additional settings. I'm going to go to details. So under details, I can select the sensitivity of the wake up word. I can also choose to use the wake up word when something else is playing on the speaker. And you can train your voice to the wake up word. So with voice wake up enabled, I can actually command Bixby, what's the weather tomorrow?
Friday looks like clear skies with a high of 63.
I can also do this from the lock screen. Hi Bixby, what's the weather tomorrow in Toronto?
Friday, you might want to keep your umbrella handy.
Now that did not require me to unlock the device, but certain commands do. Hi Bixby, open YouTube.
Tell me your voice password to continue.
Computer.
Okay, here it is.
So this allows me to train a specific voice password, which is trained to my voice. And of course, I can choose any word as long as it's long enough. If we tap and hold on the home key, this takes us to the Google Voice Assistant, very familiar stuff. We have our recent apps, which allows us to take a look at some of the multitasking features. So the recent apps interface is pretty familiar, very stock Android 7, nothing terribly unique. Now, in terms of side-by-side windowing, it's easy to activate. So in terms of the apps that support it, you'll see this little icon next to the close icon. So that means I can open up the gallery app on one side and I can open up Chrome on another side and then resize the windows and they should automatically scale. And I can also quickly jump back and forth between apps by double tapping the recent apps button. And if I want to open up a different app here, I can also just select something else. Now, if I go back to the home screen, this allows me to open up another app. So if I want Twitter down below, this allows me to open up Twitter and retain the Photos app toward the top. Now, when you're within split screen mode, if you tap each screen here, you'll see a blue divider indicating which screen is currently active. So when you act upon it, such as pressing the back button, it will only go back within that specific app. Now, if you tap on the center divider, we get to some controls here. So again, the screen that's highlighted in blue, we can close that out or we can switch to another one. We can swap between the top and bottom. We can also pop out the active window into a window view. And then we can also pin part of the app. So if you want to scale down part of the app like so, and click done, this will pin it to the top of the screen and we can actually continue interacting with it, or we can just go back to resizing it. There's a few other multi-window features to take a look at. So we have to go to advanced features. So if we go to advanced features, we'll find a multi-window section and we can toggle on these two features, use the recents button to activate split screen view and the pop-up view action, which is a feature we've seen before. Now, you can also swipe on the screen to see how this works, but all we have to do is swipe in from the upper left or right corner, resize the window to how we want it, drop it, and this will minimize the window, which stays in the foreground while we navigate through the interface. Alternatively, we can also minimize this into a badge view. So this hovers like so. And we can also continue doing this with up to 5 apps at once. So if I want to do this with Chrome, just resize it like so. And then I can minimize it into a badge view. And they stay on top of each other like so. And if you want to expand it out, just tap it and they expand out to this list. Now, if you have all of these apps open at once, if you hit the home key, this will also minimize them back to that badge view. If you tap and hold, you can also remove them all at one time. Because this is such a large device, we do have a one-handed mode, which is under advanced features. So you can turn this on right here or turn it off. So you can activate it by swiping in from the lower left or lower right corner. It can be a little tricky here, but as you can see, you can also resize it by swiping in or out. You can also swap between the left hand and right hand side, tap anywhere on either side of the screen to maximize it. And you can also change the way we activate the feature. So if you go to settings here, you can activate it via the home button. So if you tap the home button 3 times, this will activate the same feature. There's quite a few other things to take a look at under advanced features. So for example, we have Smart Stay, which keeps track of our eyes. So it keeps the display from going to sleep and puts it back to sleep when you're not looking at it. We have games, so we can enable the game launcher. We'll take a look at that in just a moment. We also have the one-handed mode, finger sensor gesture. So if you swipe on the finger sensor up top, this will actually invoke the drop-down shade, and you can also dismiss it with the same action. We also have the quick launch camera, which is on by default, but if you just double tap the home key, this will launch directly into the camera app, whether the phone is locked or not. We have a few other familiar Samsung features, such as Smart Capture. So if you swipe your hand on the screen, this will take a screen grab. Now, this also brings up a few other utilities here, so we can crop this and much more, but we can also do scroll capture. So if you're on a website, with scroll capture, this allows you to grab the entire website or just parts of it. So if I select scroll capture, I can continue capturing the entire website until I'm happy with how much I have. And I can see that building out right here along the right side. This is also where we'll find the video enhancer. So if we enable this, this will improve the image quality of video in certain apps. So you can see the apps that are compatible with it. Now, if we dig into the settings panel, there's always a lot to take a look at here. Now, up top, we actually have a notification center for just the settings panel. In fact, we have a notification badge from device maintenance. If we tap on that, you can see there's some suggestions for battery performance, and that's because a certain app is using quite a bit of battery life. Of course, you can also just search for whatever you want, but we're going to start with a few interesting options. So if you go to connections, under Bluetooth, very similar to the Galaxy S8, we have Bluetooth 5.0, so we have something called dual audio, which allows us to stream music to multiple devices. Sound and vibration has some of the obvious features, but something that's kind of buried in here, which is worth taking a look at, is sound quality and effects. So this allows us to tune the audio quality for any connected device, such as my headphones here, and I can use any one of these upscalers. But if I go to advanced, I can also manually adjust the EQ. So I can just select any one of these scalers if I want. And you can see the description of what these are by tapping on them. We also have adapt sound, so this will help us to find the best sound for us. So you'll see these presets, or you can customize the sound for you. And what you do here is basically listen to a bunch of tones with your headphones, and this will allow you to tune it correctly for your ears. Another useful feature is separate app sound. So if you want to separate your Bluetooth audio from the rest of the audio on your device, this is where you can set this up. So if we turn this on and go to the app source, so for example, you can choose one of your music apps. In this case, I'm just going to go with YouTube here, and then I can go ahead and select the audio source for that app. In this case, Bluetooth device. So that means when YouTube is playing and I'm connected to a Bluetooth audio device, it will stream the audio to the Bluetooth speaker while retaining all the audio from the phone on the phone. So I won't hear games playing or notifications on the Bluetooth speaker. There's always a lot to take a look at under display settings. So we have our different screen modes. So I'm just using adaptive display, but there's some other options here, such as AMOLED Cinema, Photo, and just basic. We can also change the temperature of the display. So if you want a warmer display, just drag this over to the right or cooler to the left. Actually, when you go cooler, to me, it looks a little more green than blue. Now, if you enable advanced options, you can also change the RGB values manually. Because this screen has an unusual aspect ratio with this extra tall display, we have some full screen app options. So most of the apps automatically scale, so there's no option to turn that feature off. But for certain non-native apps, like a lot of these Google apps, you can turn this feature on and off. So for example, with Chrome, if we go to Chrome now, you should see that it doesn't quite fill up the top of the screen. You'll see some space at the top and bottom. When it comes to icon frames, this is on by default, so this unifies the app design on the device. But if you want to go with icons only, you can click Apply, click Done, and if you go to the home screen now, you can see the native app icons. We can also customize the navigation bar. In fact, we can change up the colors in this Bluetooth device. So that means when YouTube is playing and I'm connected to a Bluetooth audio device, it will stream the audio to the Bluetooth speaker while retaining all the audio from the phone on the phone. So I won't hear games playing or notifications on the Bluetooth speaker. There's always a lot to take a look at under display settings. So we have our different screen modes. So I'm just using adaptive display, but there's some other options here, such as AMOLED Cinema, Photo, and just basic. We can also change the temperature of the display. So if you want a warmer display, just drag this over to the right or cooler to the left. Actually, when you go cooler, to me, it looks a little more green than blue. Now, if you enable advanced options, you can also change the RGB values manually. Because this screen has an unusual aspect ratio with this extra tall display, we have some full screen app options. So most of the apps automatically scale, so there's no option to turn that feature off. But for certain non-native apps, like a lot of these Google apps, you can turn this feature on and off. So for example, with Chrome, if we go to Chrome now, you should see that it doesn't quite fill up the top of the screen. You'll see some space at the top and bottom. When it comes to icon frames, this is on by default, so this unifies the app design on the device. But if you want to go with icons only, you can click Apply, click Done, and if you go to the home screen now, you can see the native app icons. We can also customize the navigation bar. In fact, we can change up the colors, and they're all these light pastel colors. We can also change the intensity of the press of the home button. So if you want to require a stronger press for it to work, you can go ahead and select that. So when you press the home key now, it doesn't respond just with a light tap. You actually have to press harder on it. But more importantly, you can change up the layout here. So if you want to go with the standard Android layout, you can choose that or go with default. Now this is off by default, but if you want to prevent accidental touches when your phone is in your pocket or in a bag, you can go ahead and turn this on. With device maintenance, I can take a quick look at the health of this device. So I can see currently I'm in performance mode, but I can toggle different modes here. So I have entertainment mode, gaming mode, and optimized mode, which is recommended, and that's on by default. You can see exactly what this does, and you can customize it as well. If I tap on battery, I can see my usage, I can see what apps are pulling the most battery life, and I can change the battery saving measures by selecting one of these modes. This also gives me a quick look at my storage, so I can see how much space I'm using. I can clean up some space, and I can see what types of files are taking up that space. And then I also have my memory manager. So right now, it's going to check to see how much RAM I'm using and how much I can free up. Now, if I go back to that main interface, it's telling me I have an 84 out of 100, but it can fix this right now, so it'll close down some apps, clean up some space, and more. Game tools have also been enhanced here, so if we take a look at them, we can bring them up by bringing up the navigation bar, and you'll see that right in the lower right corner. So we have things like a screen recorder for capturing our gameplay. We can take a screen grab and more. We can also lock the navigation keys and the screen so we don't accidentally touch it. We can also turn off notifications during gameplay, and we can enable something called Edge Touch Lock. So this will prevent you from accidentally swiping on the game or interrupting the game when you're handling the phone. Otherwise, it doesn't really ignore the edges of this display. So taking a quick look at the camera app, I can zoom in and out using the telephoto and the wide angle lens really quickly. I can also use the shutter release to zoom in manually, which combines both the telephoto camera, the main camera, and digital zooming. And it all happens pretty seamlessly. Now, in terms of some of these other features here, such as live focus, this does use the telephoto camera. So you actually zoom in, and it applies a digital blur around the subject because the cameras can keep track of depth. So you can go with a more intense blur or really dial it back, but generally speaking, I keep it toward the middle to keep a more natural look. You can snap your photograph here, and when you go back to the gallery to take a look at that image, you can actually adjust the blur later because, again, it's happening electronically. So all I have to do is dial in the blur according to what you prefer and then save it as a new file. This also allows me to zoom out to see the full image versus the cropped in live focus image. Now, if you're a fan of iOS's live photo feature, that's also available here. It's called Motion Photo. So if you activate it under the settings panel, when there's motion or movement on the screen, you can go to the photograph in your gallery and play the motion photos. You can see a short, couple-second clip that just shows you the motion during the photograph. We also have Bixby Vision built into the camera app, so this will automatically scan for things in your image here, and I can actually tap on specific items. So it looks like it scanned a large section here, so let me go ahead and bring it down to this Funko Pop so we get a more localized search. What's funny here is that we have a wine section, so if you have a wine bottle, this can identify the wine bottle, but let's go with images here. And in terms of images, it should be able to find Funko Pops, and indeed it did find it. Let's see if we can find the exact right one. I don't see it toward the top here, but they did get pretty close. If I go to shopping, it might bring up some shopping results. And there you go. Looks like it brought up unrelated items, but it's getting closer. So in the end, even though this is a very expensive phone, I think it has earned its price premium over the Galaxy S8 Plus with the stylish dual camera setup and a slightly larger screen. Of course, we also got a ton of software features that go with that stylus, but what I would like to see is perhaps better battery performance, and Samsung really needs to work on its biometric sensors, from the location and speed of the fingerprint sensor to the reliability of the iris and face scanners. So those are areas they definitely need to focus on, as well as the speakers. But otherwise, this is a phone with a beautiful display, a great camera system, and tons of great software features that make this a powerhouse device for people who need to get a lot of stuff done, or really just like having a lot of features on their smartphone. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this look at the Galaxy Note 8. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know with a like, and I'll see you again in my next video.
Alex, X. Alessandro Roca. Goodness what? Fuck. This is the only day. Somebody please stop the clock. Oh. Huh? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Say hi to me. I love you. I love you. Hug me. Ouch. Fuck you. This is about good. Okay, so on the first half of flight, I take you first to my room. This flight at the table is done. The first flight is already done from Moscow. Now, uh, whoa. Switching the SV5013. This will be using it in the conference. trying to make the new board game for toys. A Minnie Mouse, I'm a toy. Fuck you all. A Minnie Mouse, I'm a toy. Fuck you all. Detroit boy.
Hey guys, Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the Samsung Galaxy Mega. So the Mega is a new line of Android smartphones from Samsung. Now the Mega refers to the large screen size. So this is the 6.3-inch model. There is a 5.8-inch model. 6.3 obviously is the more higher spec version, but the interesting thing about the Mega series is that right now they are not high spec phones and kind of priced in the mid-range. So although you get a very large screen, you actually get a fairly mid-range phone priced accordingly. So it's kind of an interesting product. Right now it's not sold in the US. I don't expect it to come to the US, but it is sold globally. For example, I have the French version here, French language version. This will be sold in the UK, for example. So you can pick this up if you're in Europe. And if you're in the US, you can pick this up, of course, from third-party sellers. And this will work on GSM carriers like AT&T and T-Mobile. Will work on HSPA Plus here, and we'll work on LTE in the global market. So let's go ahead and take a look to see what we get. Now, in terms of specs, you're going to have to excuse my French here, but we have a 1.7 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon 400 processor and Adreno 305 GPU. We also have 1.5 gigs of RAM, or 8 and 16 gig capacities internally. You can also expand that thanks to a micro SD card slot up to 64 gigs. You have an 8-megapixel camera with a 1.9 megapixel secondary camera, so pretty good cameras. NFC technology, a very large 3200 milliamp hour battery. It also supports GPS and GLONASS. We have a micro USB port for charging, which also supports MHLC and output HD video through your USB port thanks to a dongle, which you have to purchase separately. We have our model number here, which is the GTI 9205, and we have Android 4.2 running on here. So this is the latest version of Android, also supporting the latest version of TouchWiz UX, which is very similar to what you get on the Galaxy S4. So let's go ahead and unbox this thing. Let's crack the seal. Lift the lid. There is our Galaxy Mega GPS NFC 1.7 gigahertz processor. HD super clear LCD. This is actually a 720p display. And there we go. That's our Android branding lifted up. As you can see, this is the black version. You can get this in white, although it wasn't shipping at the time I purchased mine. Normally, I prefer white. So let's set this aside for just a moment. Looks exactly like a GS4, just blown up quite a bit. And let's take a look to see what we get inside this box. Let's flip this around here. So you can see we have our manuals in French. I wonder if there's an English version in here. Nope. Just French. Now they've also included a 4 gig micro SD card, so right there. And they also give us an adapter for using this with our computer. So I'm not sure if all versions shipping will include this, but that's kind of a nice bonus. We have our European wall adapter here for charging our device. So white doesn't quite match the black foam. That's okay. We also have our micro USB charging cable. We have our set of headphones. These are the Samsung headphones, in-ear headphones with those gels that fit into your ear. Let's see if they've included any other. Yep, there they are. They're kind of slotted in here. So these are the other gels you can put in your ear. Find the right fit. We also have that very large battery here. Again, 3,200 milliamp hours. Let me see if I can get this out. A little tab here. There you go. Definitely the largest battery I've seen. So let's go ahead and take a look at the phone so we can pop the battery in. All right, so let's get back to the phone itself. We're going to peel off some plastic, but first you can see we have some illustrations here demonstrating how to install the battery. So that's pretty obvious. Let's peel this off. You can see that sort of plastic. We still have that glossy plastic, again, very much like the Galaxy S4. You can see it kind of has a weave pattern to it. Looks very sharp, especially in these bright lights. Let's go to the front here and peel off the front panel. It's right off. That's a lot of glossy glass right there. Looks very sharp. So along the side, you see we have that chrome bezel. Again, very evocative of the GS4. This is not metal. This is still plastic, but it looks very sharp. We have our volume rocker on this side. We have our sleep-wake power button on the right side. You can see it's still placed in a convenient spot for your thumb. So it's a pretty natural location. It's not all the way up here, for example. Same with the volume rocker. Down here, find that USB charging port as well as a microphone. Actually, you can see I have more plastic on here. We're going to have to peel that off. You can see we have an IR blaster. We have another microphone, noise cancellation or other microphone. We have our headphone jack. And that's about it. So let's go ahead and start peeling off this plastic. So as you can see, just like the GS4, they like to wrap it in lots of little pieces of plastic around the bezel so it doesn't scratch in transit. All right, so I think that is the last piece of plastic. So let's go ahead and take a look at the front. So we have our home button, again, very familiar to any Samsung phone. You can see we have that weave pattern along the front carried over on the front panel. Up here, you can see we have our earpiece as well as our ambient light sensor, proximity sensor, as well as our camera. And what you don't see here, what you get in the GS4 is an RGB sensor for adjusting the display. So kind of stripped down a little bit from the GS4. Let's go ahead and take off the back panel. You can see we also have our speaker down here, again, a lot like the GS4. We have our LED flash, 8-megapixel camera. They do not have a piece of plastic over the lens like they do with the GS4, so that's good. So let's go ahead and peel off this back panel. Again, you have a little thumb port here for popping off the panel. Comes right off. So you pretty much have a very large slot for the battery. Now, something interesting here is that we actually have a combined micro SD and micro SIM slot. So they're stacked on top of each other. So it's kind of interesting. So you can see below here, we have our SIM. Up here, we have our SD card slot. Now, like the GS4, the battery itself contains the NFC technology, not the back panel. So if you look inside, you'll see there are no antennas here for NFC. So let's go ahead and install the battery. Just drop it in and put the back cover back on. So it snaps into place. Pretty familiar for any Samsung phone. It fits on pretty snugly. All right, so let's boot this up for the first time. Just going to tap and hold the power button. Feel a little vibration. Samsung Galaxy Mega GT i9-205. You can also see we have a LED notification light up here. During the setup process, Samsung kind of coaches you on some of the features available through TouchWiz. That includes S-Beam. So if you tap on S-Beam, you get a little illustration on how that works. Same with AirView. We're pretty familiar with AirView. Basically, you can hover your finger over your display, and it will detect the presence and act accordingly. So certain apps can take advantage of that, and we'll demonstrate that in a bit. We have Smart State technology as well, so it's able to see your eyes and will act accordingly, so it won't turn off the screen, that sort of thing. We have Easy Mode, so you can enable Easy Mode if you want a simpler user experience. And we have Adapt Display, basically it adapts the display to the ambient lighting conditions. All right, so let's go to next. Now I can name my phone here, so it wants to do Michael Kukelka Gala, so let's fix that and just call it the Galaxy Mega. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this giant display again. 6.3 inches, 720p resolution, good for 233 pixels per inch. Certainly not as pixel dense as something like the Galaxy S4, which is a 1080p display over a 5-inch display. So that gives us a pixel density well north of 400. So not the pixel sharpness of the Galaxy S4, but still pretty impressive. The thing that really jumps out to me is that although this is an LCD display, it has very rich contrast, very rich colors, so it still looks absolutely fantastic. So as you can see, we have that TouchWiz user experience again, very similar to GS4. I really like that lock screen. I really would like to be there right now. So you just swipe up, unlock it. You can also swipe down from the lock screen to access your quick toggles up here. So you see all the familiar toggles you're familiar with from the GS4, such as Smart Stay, AirView, NFC, S-Beam, Wi-Fi hotspot, multi-windowing, screen mirroring, power saving mode, blocking mode. Blocking mode basically is a do not disturb feature. Mobile data, Bluetooth, screen rotation lock, sound, GPS, and Wi-Fi. What you don't see here is smart scrolling, which this phone does not have like the GS4. You also have your brightness controls, and you have your ongoing notifications. So if we swipe to unlock, you can see we have a pretty familiar TouchWiz user interface. This is the default configuration. You can see all the apps they've included on the home screens. So you can see also we have these widgets. We have our calendar widget. We have our story album, which is a app for organizing your photos on your device. You also have your widget here for your Samsung music player. You have your weather widget, your search widget. You have email, camera, gallery, Samsung App Store, and the Play Store, as well as the Internet Android browser, which is interesting here. So it's not, the default browser is not Google Chrome. It's the Android browser that Samsung put together. Messaging, contacts, phone. They do include Chrome, I believe. I don't know if this installed when I restored from my account, but Chrome is there in the app drawer. So again, you just go to the app drawer and you'll find even more apps. And you can also use this little scrolling gesture here to scroll between screens. And you can do that also on the home screen. And you can manage it just by pinching out like this. So if you want to change your home screen, you just tap the home button at the top of each screen. And you can move them around by dragging them around. And you can add other home screens like that. Or you can tap and hold them and remove them. There you go. Works also the same with apps. So for example, I don't want to use this browser. So we can go up to remove. You can go to the app drawer, get Chrome. Chrome here. And drop it down. There you go. Now because this is such a large screen, we now have rotation for landscape and portrait mode. So it's kind of similar to Samsung tablets. We haven't really seen this on their smartphones. Now, there's a lot we can do from the lock screen thanks to Android 4.2, which now supports lock screen widgets. So, for example, we can swipe across this clock face and get to one of our screens. Now, I've already added one widget here, and I can go and add another widget to another screen just by hitting this plus button. So here I can add Gmail. So I'll add Gmail to my lock screen, and it's asking me what I want to see in Gmail. So let me just go to my inbox. So now you can see it's loading that. So if I go to lock, unlock, swipe, I get Google Now, and now I get my Gmail. So I can quickly look through that without unlocking the phone. Now we have two options here for the right lock screen. So whatever is to the right of the home lock screen, you can get two options. You can either get the camera, or you can get this series of apps. So you can modify this by going to the edit button, and you can remove them just like that, or you can add them from your list of available apps. Now, because this is Android 4.2, we have two ways of accessing the drop-down menu. So you can use the single swipe to access your notification panel along with your quick settings toggles, or you can use the two-finger swipe to get right to your quick settings toggles. And you can also jump between them with this little button in the top. Now, if you're under your quick settings here, you can also edit them. It takes you to the notification panel settings. So here you can rearrange them. So for example, if you want Smart Stay up here, you can do that, and it bumps Wi-Fi back down here. If you want to put it back, there you go. Now, like all Samsung devices, we still have our off-screen menu controls. So we have our menu button, back button, as well as our home button. Now, these do have dual purposes. So for example, if we tap and hold the home button, we do get our recent apps. So here we can swipe them out of the way to close them, or we can tap on any one of them to launch them. We can also go to our manager here. So we can manage our active applications, so we can end them, download apps. We can manage our RAM, so we can clear some of that memory, and we have storage, so we can see how much storage we're taking up. Now you can also get to Google Now from here. So if you hit the G, that'll take you to Google Now. So we can do we can use Google Now. What's the weather like tomorrow in Rochester Hills, Michigan?
Tomorrow's forecast for Rochester Hills is 75 degrees with a chance of storm.
Now we can also double tap the home button to get to S Voice. What's the weather like tomorrow in Rochester Hills, Michigan?
You will hear some thunder on Saturday.
Now you can activate multi-windowing mode by tapping and holding the back button here. So this is the multi-window tray, and basically you can scroll through the available apps for this mode. And you can also edit what appears here. So if you don't want, for example, Hangouts to be here, you can just drag it out of there, or you can drag it back in. Now you can also move this from left to right sides if you want it on the left side. There you go. You can also tap it to hide it. It automatically hides itself after a period of inactivity. You can also use this in landscape mode. So if it goes to landscape, you can see it's either on the left or right hand side. And again, you can move it around from left to right side if you wish. Now, multi-windowing allows you to run two apps at the same time. So, for example, we can launch Chrome, and then we can grab another app. So, for example, let's see if we can grab the YouTube app, drop that here. So there you go. You have the full The Verge website up here, which I can scroll through, and then you have YouTube down here. And you can see it's also coaching me on how to use YouTube here. So, for example, I can go ahead and launch one of my uploads and watch it in the background. So let's go ahead and launch this one.
Portable and powerful.
So there we go. We can scroll it up or down.
I can take it with me wherever I go.
And you can also switch between the screens. So you can go to the bottom or top screen. There you go. And then we have to go back to Chrome back in here if you want it.
It's like an entire library.
Now, because this is such a large phone, Samsung has added something called one-handed operation, which we've seen with the Note 2. So if you go to settings, go to My Device, you'll see one-handed operation. You can toggle all of these on or off. They're off by default. So if you go to learn about one-handed operation, it basically illustrates it for you. So it kind of aligns the keyboard to the left-hand or right-hand side of the screen so you can use your thumb. Let me just demonstrate that for you. So I've enabled this. If I go to my phone dialer, you can see right now it's orientated toward the left. If I want to use it on the right, to do that, and you can see it's within thumb typing distance. So that's very useful with a phone so large. Now, one of the more interesting apps here is S Translator, which also launched with the Galaxy S4. Basically, you can speak in one language and it will output in another. So this is great if you're traveling. You get lots of languages. So, for example, I have German selected, but you can select Brazilian, English, UK, English to the US, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, simplified Chinese, and Spanish. So basically, I can speak in English. How old are you? It'll translate it in text, so wie alt sind Sie? And we can have it speak it.
Wie alt sind Sie?
So you can use this to interact with other people. So it's kind of a nice sort of live translator. This also means that another person could speak in their language and it will translate it into English. So for example, Ich habe ein Kopfweh. So there you go. That translates into I have a headache in English. Another big app here is Watch On, which uses the IR Blaster on the phone to control your AV equipment. Now, it's very easy to set up. Basically, you tell the device your location, it automatically finds your channel listing based on your service, and it populates it with the currently broadcasting shows. So that means you can basically tap on any one of these to launch the show. So it makes it very easy to discover your content without having to go to the menu on your TV to figure out what's going on. This is definitely a much nicer user interface. So you can also set this up to control your AV equipment, your TV, your AV receiver, your DVR, that sort of thing. So for example, if I want to tap on any one of these shows like Law & Order, if I click watch the channel for me, you can see it's flashing the IR code right now. And then I can go to my remote control and control it. So I can control the volume, the channel, the source, I can mute it. I can also go to my TV and DVR control navigation, as well as play, pause, reverse, that sort of thing. So it works pretty well. I definitely like having this on my phone. Kind of beats having the remote control somewhere else in the room. So you at least always have it with you. Now, something Watch On supports, which I can't demonstrate, is that it can actually broadcast video from your smart TV, specifically your Samsung Smart TV, to your phone. So you can basically continue watching your show from your TV on your smartphone. So if you walk away to the kitchen, you always have your show with you on your phone, and you can resume it back on your Samsung Smart TV when you get back to your entertainment room. A really neat app here is Group Play. So Group Play basically works across Samsung devices. So if you have Group Play installed on that device, you can share music, files, photos, etc. between devices pretty easily. But first you have to create a group. And so you have to have one host device to do this. So we're going to go create a group, set a password. So it's going to turn this on. So now I have several options here. I can share music, share pictures, share documents, or play games. All I'm going to do is show you how sharing music works, which is kind of neat. So we're going to go to share music. Now I'm going to share my one music file here, which is included with the device. We're going to click done. So now I have my host device playing the music. So now I have my Galaxy S4 here, which also has the Group Play app installed. It also has NFC technology. So all I have to do in order to get the music to play here and here is touch the phones together. So there we go. Automatically launches the Group Play app. We're going to select Join Group. Enter in my password. Go to Share Music. So there you go. So there you go. The devices are in sync and playing the track together. So basically, you have your right speaker and your left speaker, so you get this kind of dynamic surround sound audio. Sounds pretty good, and of course, you can add several devices to get multiple speakers. In theory, you can generate a 5.1 surround sound system. So it works pretty good. So again, this device controls it. You go up here to toggle between your controls, pause it, play it. You can also control volume right from the host device. So it controls the volume across all devices. In fact, you have specific control over the volume of each device from that control as well. Now, AirView is also a feature we're familiar with from the Galaxy S4. It only works with some apps. So, for example, the email app, basically, if you hover your thumb over one of these messages here, you can see you get a little preview. This also works in the Gallery app and the Calendar app. So let me go to the Calendar and show you. So in the Calendar, all you have to do is hold your finger over the event, and it gives you some more detailed information. This also works in the Gallery app, so just hold your finger over any one of these albums, and it gives you a little preview of what's in them. Now, if you're in the album view, just hold your finger over any one of these images, and you get a larger one. You can also tap on it to enlarge it. Now, as we've seen before, the video player also has a pop-out video player. So, for example, if we play this video clip I recorded quite a while ago now, it has to load it, but basically what I can do is pop it out into a separate window. You can see it floats over whatever I'm doing. So right now I'm on the home screen. It's still loading the video, but I can move it around. I can also resize it. I can pause it, or I can close it. So this only works with the embedded video player, not third-party video players. The assistance is interesting. I actually haven't seen this before. It doesn't appear on my GS4 or other Samsung devices. So I'm not sure if this is available in other markets or if it's a version of the software that's yet to be pushed out. But safety assistance basically allows you to set up an emergency alert system automatically. All you have to do is hold the volume up button for 3 seconds and it will set this into motion. So what will happen is it will take photos with both cameras. It will record your location and send an emergency message to your contacts. So you can also designate your emergency contacts just by adding them. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to reveal them, but that gives you an idea. So you can add as many contacts as you want. So it's kind of like a way of contacting people in a difficult situation in which you can't pick up your phone and call anybody. Of course, it's maybe not as useful if it's in your pocket, at least the photos aren't, but you can also toggle that feature on and off. So it's kind of interesting. Now the camera app is something we're pretty familiar with as well from the GS4. It's actually very similar software. You also have mode function here, which allows you to select between different modes. One of them is beauty face. So it enhances the facial features automatically when taking portrait pictures. Best photo will take a series of pictures and then select the best one to save. Continuous shot, best face, sound and shot. Basically, you take a single photograph and you can record sound with it. Rich tone, HDR, panorama mode, sports mode for quick photography, night mode for higher exposure, automatic mode, et cetera, so you can quickly cycle between them. You can also use the grid view here instead. I'm not going to demonstrate all of those. There's a lot of them. You can also record video. And you can also snap a photo while you're taking your video. So you can see it's silent while it's doing that. You can pause it and resume recording. Now we also have voice control, so we can do things like shoot, cheese, record video. Now we also have our filters down here. We have a little arrow. If you look here, see a little arrow here indicating our filters. You can activate them and they appear live on screen. Now, if you look at our benchmark scores, you can see the GS4 really pulls ahead of the Mega, and that makes sense. We're dealing with a quad core clocked at 1.9 gigahertz versus a dual core clocked at 1.7. This also has 2 gigs of RAM. This has a next generation Snapdragon 600 processor. We also have an octa-core out there as well. So performance is definitely much better on the GS4. You also have to keep in mind that this display is much higher resolution. So 1080p versus 720p. So you have a lot more pixels here to drive than on the Mega. So performance isn't the best on the Mega, but of course, you're paying less for it. Now, of course, the big story here is screen size, which means you can get a lot on this screen at once. So for example, you loaded the full The Verge website. And although it's not a high pixel density screen like the GS4, you can still read very tiny text without zooming in. So for example, please zoom all the way down to these thumbnail articles. You can see the text is actually pretty sharp. It's pretty legible. If we focus in here, so you can see it's not as sharp as it could be, but it's surprising considering this is only 233 ppi. Now, just to do a size comparison, here we have the 8-inch Note, we have our Mega 6.3-inch, our 5.5-inch Note 2, our Galaxy S4, and then our relatively tiny iPhone 5. So you can see there's a huge difference in size between these devices. So size is the big story here. So in conclusion, the Mega is kind of a in-between device. It seems like they need to go a step further to bring it up to more exciting levels. So it'd be nice to have a phone this size, but have really current generation specs. But of course, you'd get much higher price tags at that point. So it's kind of nice that they're exploring this sort of category, and maybe eventually we'll see even higher end versions of phones this large. In terms of size, it is a very large phone. Most people aren't going to like this. I have a very large hand, so it works for me, but it's still a two-handed device. It's not something I'm going to use comfortably with one hand at all times. You have to shuffle around, that sort of thing. But it's actually very thin and lightweight, so that really makes this size more manageable. That's a big, that really impacts the overall feel of this phone, or the overall ergonomics of this phone. Like, for example, the Note to me feels like a heavy brick in my pocket. It's a little too thick. It just doesn't feel like a very comfortable phone to use. With this phone design, you have a nice angled edge, which gives you a more grippable surface area. All the buttons are in the right location. They're very ergonomically placed. And overall, it just feels like a very well-balanced phone. They've done a good job handling this size. The display, again, LCD. I prefer LCD technology because it's brighter, it's more color accurate, it's particularly useful for taking photographs. You want a more accurate view of your photographs. OLED tends to exaggerate colors. It tends to look very good with user interface elements, you know, with vivid, solid colors, but I really prefer more accurate color reproduction than kind of the oversaturated look of the OLED displays. It's also more brighter. Whites are a lot brighter. They're more white instead of blue or washed out. So it looks pretty good to me. I really like this display. Certainly not the density of those displays, but overall very sharp, and can't complain at 233 ppi. That's pretty good. Now, performance is actually pretty good, and I think part of that is the fact that this device is using or pushing less pixels than the GS4. The GS4 has a lot more pixels to push with that 1080p display than the 720p display here. So it actually performs pretty well. It doesn't feel as sluggish as maybe the GS4 does from time to time. Also, despite having these really impressive specs in the phone versus the lower end specs in the Mega, this actually does a pretty good job keeping up with the new and pretty feature-packed TouchWiz. The cameras are also pretty good. So that 8-megapixel camera, maybe not a 13-megapixel sensor, but it does a pretty good job. Again, very similar to the GS3 we're familiar with. And also, the rear-facing camera also is pretty good. It's pretty much the same camera you get with the GS4. Alrighty, guys, I really want to know what you think about the Galaxy Mega. Is this phone just too big, or is this something you actually want to see? So let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you again in the next one. What's up, guys? Mike here, the Detroit Borg, with a look at the BlackBerry Z10. This is personally my very first BlackBerry to ever review on this channel, so I'm really looking forward to it. Now, the Z10 is an all-new offensive from BlackBerry to regain its market share lost to Android and Apple. So the Z10 is sporting BlackBerry's all-new operating system, BlackBerry OS 10, or BlackBerry 10 OS, I keep doing that, BlackBerry 10 OS. There are two devices that are launching in this first round of products, the Z10, which we have here, which is kind of like a traditional touchscreen smartphone, and then we have the Q10, which is a traditional BlackBerry type smartphone with a QWERTY keyboard. Now, this is the unlocked international version, but this will be coming to the US on all the major carriers such as AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. Part of the new BlackBerry is the fact that they're no longer called Research and Motion or REM. The funny thing is the Z10 packaging, at least on this international version, still refers to Research and Motion. So it looks like they made that kind of a last minute decision. All right, so let's go ahead and cut the seals here. All right, so let's just lift the lid here. And there is the Z10. And as you can tell, I have the version. Now, this is black or white. So you can see we have that white back panel, the white sides and the white bezel. I think it looks pretty sharp. So within the package, we'll find some of our accessories. We lift this little tray here. Looks like we got our literature here on the top. So we got BlackBerry smartphone. Looks like safety and product information. We also have our quick start guide. Right here, it tells us a little bit about the phone, how to use some of its features. There you go, nice and colorful pamphlet. We have reference to our Snapdragon S4 processor here, so a little flyer telling us about that. And we have some of our accessories. So we have our earphones, which include a remote control and a microphone. It looks like kind of crummy headphones, but we're going to have to take a look, see how those sound. We also have our micro USB cable here with the BlackBerry branding on it, white to match the phone. And we have our battery. So this has a removable battery. So if you want to purchase a replacement battery just to keep on hand, that's certainly an option for you. This is an 1800 milliamp battery, by the way. And that's it in that compartment. Here we should have some more accessories. Whoops, there we go. Okay, now I have the UK wall adapter here, which I can't use. So there you go, our BlackBerry branded UK wall adapter, USB wall adapter for charging. All right, so let's get to the star of the show, the BlackBerry Z10. So we have a little cover here covering the glass. That's the front. On the back, this tab. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look around the BlackBerry Z10. So on the back, you have that white plastic panel with that stippled pattern here. So it gives a nice grippable texture. It's also very scratch resistant and durable. Along the side, again, you'll see a smoother white plastic, which kind of got a nice finish to it. You can see we also have a little slight angle to the bottom here. Along the top, it's straighter. So you can see anyway that the front has these bezels, which give you a lot of gripping room to hold the phone in landscape. Along the top, you'll find a noise cancellation microphone. We have our sleep-wake button, as well as our headphone jack. On the back, we'll find our camera, which is an 8-megapixel camera with an LED flash. Now, of course, you have autofocusing. You have electronic or digital stabilization. This records video at 1080p in 30 frames per second. On the front, you can see behind the glass, in addition to an ambient light sensor and proximity sensor, we also have a 2-megapixel front-facing camera, which is good for 720p video at 30 frames per second. We also have our earpiece there, nice metal grate. On the bottom, you find a little microphone there, as well as our BlackBerry logo, which is actually part of the surface area for interacting with the new user interface, and we'll demonstrate that. At the bottom, find our, this is our release port for opening up the back panel, which I'll do in just a minute. And along the side, we have our volume rocker as well as that center button, which is a multi-function button, but usually it's used to mute the phone, or you can also press and hold it to bring up voice command. We also have our BlackBerry logo with this nice metal inlay in the back panel. So let's go ahead and pop off the back panel so we can get our battery in. Comes off pretty easily. You can also see we have our NFC radio built into the back. So inside we have our port for the battery. We have our camera. We have our SIM slot. Our SIM slot's right here, I'm sorry. You have to remove the battery in order to install it, and you have your micro SD expansion slot. So this allows you to expand it up to 64 gigs beyond what is included. So this comes standard with 16 gigs of internal storage. All right, so let's go ahead and install our BlackBerry battery. Slide into place, and we're good. So let's put it on the back panel. And we're good. So we're already starting up here. Let me get my fingerprints off. And while we're doing that, let's talk about the specs. So this is a Snapdragon S4 processor running at 1.5 gigahertz. That's a dual core processor. We also get 2 gigs of RAM. Again, 16 gigs of internal storage. This has all the features you've come to expect from phones, such as accelerometers, magnetometers. You have Bluetooth 4.0. You have dual band Wi-Fi, ABGN. Have LTE capabilities in here, so this supports all the latest and greatest in terms of cellular connectivity. Now, in terms of the display, we have a 4.2 inch screen with a resolution of 768 by 1280 that gives us a pixel density of 355 ppi. So we have a very nice high quality LCD display here. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our phone for the first time. So we're going to go to English, and then we're going to swipe left, continue. Now it wants me to install my card, which I'm not going to do right now. So I'm going to swipe left to continue. I'm going to search for my Wi-Fi network. All right, so my next step is to agree to this warranty information. So I agree. And BlackBerry ID, which I do not have. You can create a new one, or you can sign into your existing account. So let me go ahead and create a new one. All right, so our next step is a tutorial on how to use the gesture-based operating system. BlackBerry 10 is very gesture-based, so it's not immediately obvious on how to use this phone. So of course, the first thing they want to do is train you on how to use it. Let's go ahead and continue. Now, starting with the lock screen, there are 2 ways to wake up the device. You can use the physical button up top to get you to the main lock screen, and then you just swipe up to unlock the device. However, you can also use the touch screen just by tapping the lower part of the screen, and it wakes up. So that's one of the, I think this is the first device I've ever seen that actually uses the touchscreen to unlock it. Most require you to press the physical unlock button. You also have your notification badges up here on the home screen. You can also launch your camera just by tapping and holding the icon until it launches. So there you go. We'll talk about the camera a bit later. Now, also on the lock screen, you can silence the device. So for example, if you swipe down, it goes into silence mode, or notifications off. So it turns off all of our notifications, and you can actually activate the alarm from that screen as well. So you can turn that off and on. In terms of our user interface, we actually have several home screens here. So the main home screen is our multitasker. And we have up to 8 suspended or active apps, and each window indicates which app we're using. And actually, each window is active, so it gives us updated information through each window. So for example, Twitter feeds and that sort of thing will actually appear here. So they're not just dumb screen grabs of the last state of the app, they're actually active. Now, if you swipe right, you'll see our apps. So these are all the pre-installed apps that BlackBerry has provided. Now, if you swipe all the way to the right.
Hey everyone, welcome to my video of me working on my desk. اليوم أنا راح انسحب الساعة 10, so I just have a few minutes to do my working before I go. Then when I come back, I'll do my work here now. When I come back, I'm gonna just upload more Minimaster's YouTube videos. لما أرجع خلاص you will film new videos. But for now, all videos are going to be scheduled. The old videos will be scheduled. Our video today premieres at 11:30, which is in a few minutes. And then the next video will be on Tuesday, and then on Thursday, and then on Friday and Saturday. I'll upload Friday and Saturday today. Or tomorrow. I don't know if I'm busy today, so I'm gonna upload it maybe tomorrow. The one for Sunday, Friday and Saturday video, and Sunday. Last video of Minnie Mouse to be on the 30th of July. Then she takes a break. So then her new video will be on the 23rd of July, which means she will not film a new video till the 23rd of July. So she's gonna take a break of filming a new video. Now she's gonna be uploading her old videos until the 23rd of July. Then the last video for Kat to be on the 23rd, on the 30th of July. The 30th of July is Kat's last YouTube video. Close office at 9 p.m. Change NBC edits thumbnail. And then at 11 o'clock p.m. is the end of NBC edit summer, which means it's from June 13 and then August 1. 2 Thursdays. June 13 was the summer of NBC edits till August 1st. Then we travel on August 1st. From August 1st to August 11 on Sunday. So what do I do during this time is I'm going to change the picture for what they call it for the channel, Huggy. It's more Ashur VOD. Okay, how do I do that? Is I have to bring the camera closer up here. I'll be wearing the New Year's glasses. Huh? Yeah. I can't take the picture, guys, because I'm live streaming. I have to wait until the lesson is done. That's how I work on my desk. This is my desk schedule for a long time. On my desk. Why I need to pause? Why you need to pause? Need to pause? Why you want me to pause for the video? I'm finished.
You get your
Sorry guys, my face signed out, so I'm going out. That's it guys, the live stream has to end because it's 2 hours now, but